Welcome to the Better by Nature podcast, where we talk to folks with inspiring stories of overcoming adversity by relying on natural remedies. On today's episode, we're back with Michele Boccardi for part 2 of her natural remedies journey, which is still being written. Before we get started, this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Life Leaf Remedies. At Life Leaf Remedies, we are passionate about making natural remedies that help you feel better today. We are combining select cannabinoids like CBD, CBDA, CBN, CBG, CBC, and even more with natural vitamins and nutrients to create effective natural remedies. If you're passionate about natural remedies to take care of yourself and your loved ones, then check us out at lifeleafremedies.com today and get free shipping plus 10% off your order when you subscribe to any of our natural remedies. Now, I hope y'all will sit back and enjoy this episode of the Better by Nature podcast and feel better today, y'all. All right. Welcome back to the Better by Nature podcast. We are here with Michele for part 2 of Running Over Adversity. In part 1, which we weren't really even sure was going to be a part 1 and part 2 at the beginning, which I love that. I think it's great. It means that there's just a lot to hear and to cover, and at the end of that, it's a lot to be inspired by. So, let's just do what it takes, right? But you covered a lot of stuff that you faced, from 2019 with your father, your stepfather, a car accident, all within 17 days?
21 days.
21
Yep.
days.
21 days. I lost my dad in 17 days. Yeah.
Just unfathomable.
Yep.
And a lot of people, I'm sure, can imagine going in a negative direction after something like that. So, we started talking about being able to pick yourself up from that place and carry forward, and different changes that were happening in your life. And oh, by the way, adversity never stops, right? There's always more.
No, it doesn't. I was listening to something after we had spoken about how hard life is, and it never gets easier. It's how you react and how you're ready to take life on. So,
Absolutely.
yes, that's what it's all about.
No doubt about it. And I'm sure everybody can relate to that in some way. Rocky's got that famous quote, right? That, it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and get back up.
Get back up.
I think it's an incredibly true quote. And yeah, I mean, you've demonstrated that. So, let's pick back up, right? We started learning a little bit about you getting into, your journey with running, your journey with more natural remedies, even in the face of some extreme circumstances. And that journey happened to run in parallel with your son a little bit and some of the things that
Yep.
he was facing. So I don't know, where would you like to begin with that?
Well, I think we were talking about his one of his races he does in Vermont in October timeframe is called Devil's Den, and it is a loop race. It's a 6 mile loop. But if you're familiar with Vermont, it doesn't have very flat anything. It's nothing like here in
Not much
Wisconsin
flat
at all
land.
miles. There's nothing flat about Vermont, you know. So, anyways, it is actually up and down, up and intertwined on the side of a mountain. The first 2 miles up is about a 1,400 foot hike up. And then
My
you
goodness.
weave in and out and around. And so we call it a running trail. There is people that do run it. You can hike it, you can crawl it, you can slide down the hill, you can sit and cry if you have to for a moment and pick yourself up and go. But anyways, it's a 6 mile circle loop that you come back in and check in and the whole thing. So I had volunteered for it. I have done Tough Mudders. We talked about our journeys with Tough Mudders and how I was in a pit crew for the world's Tough Mudders and all of that. And so I decided that through all the adversity I had been through, I wanted to constantly, one thing I've always believed in, that you can't look back.
Right.
It's there's that saying, they make the rearview mirror small for a reason. and you have your windshield. Your front windshield is huge for a reason. And so I wanted to understand more about that and understand what would happen if I trained for something like that. And I am not a runner. If my son was sitting right here, he'd probably give me a punch right now because if you're out running, you're a runner.
Yeah,
Like some
exactly.
people have a notion of, well, I don't do a 7 minute mile or an 8 minute mile. My miles are more like an 11 and a 12 minutes. So I'm not a runner. And that's not the goal. The goal is if your best is a 12-minute mile, then you are a runner and you are out. There is no rules in any books that say, in order to be a runner, you must run this amount or this
Couldn't
fast.
agree more.
And so I think people get hooked into that. So I started this journey, and I actually used Jason's wife, Amber, as my coach and my own online um, workouts to get my stamina on and running, and off we went. And I would fly out to Vermont and we would go off on runs. He actually took me through the trail because on top of everything, Miles, I am afraid of heights.
Oh, yeah. If everything wasn't hard enough, right?
I'm afraid of heights.
Gosh.
And if your dad was sitting here, he'd laugh because I can't get myself out of a paper bag. If you tell me to go north, I have no clue which way you're telling me to go. So I can get lost easily, and I'm afraid of heights. So now Michelle is going to do a trail run.
Yeah, great idea.
Great, right?
Great
And here's
idea.
why. Here's why I did it. I was hit head on. I lost my stepdad, and I lost my dad. I had two choices: to crawl in a hole or to live life, and
And
I
so
chose
you
to live.
chose. There you are.
So in that training is when I even started more honing in, not just what I was consuming, what I was drinking, what I was fueling my body, what I was drinking, but also it was the mindset that we were starting to talk about, the mindset of having the stamina to go. It was a 24-hour race. And the spirituality and the meditations of getting me into that whole, it is a 360 type of situation. And um, I pulled back on my alcohol consumption. I really honed in my eating. I do my 80/20. If you know me, on a Sunday morning, I'm going out, I'm having my pancakes. It is pancakes on Sunday morning. No ifs, ands, or buts
Stick
about
to
it.
it.
But
Absolutely.
that is my thing. But I also started reading labels. I started to um, we can go down a whole rabbit hole, but there is the essential oils that I use and the CBD or that I use because and the supplements because I wanted to be more a healthier, the best version of myself, and I
Hmm.
wanted to age. I don't hide my age, but I wanted to age gracefully, um, be vital, be energetic, be doing whatever I wanted to do.
100%. And I agree with that. And I mean, I'm obviously younger, but I think the same thing. It's like, gosh, I mean, the day I can't run kind of seems like I don't know how much living I want to do after that, you know? So I want to keep doing it as long as I can. And it seems like one of those things that as long as you keep doing it, you can keep doing it. But
Right. And
we'll figure it out.
so we had the race. I did twist my knee in the race, and that's always something that happens. It was something I had never, ever done before. Um, it was humbling, to say the least, but it was unbelievable. And my son, walked up to me just as the race was starting, and getting everybody off, and he said, all you have to do, Ma, is put one foot in front of the other. There's nothing else you have to do. And everyone needs to understand that, Miles. Whatever you are in life, you just put one foot in front of the other, you're moving forward. And it doesn't matter how fast, how slow, how much weight you lift. If you walk, if you don't want to run, don't run. Walk.
Yep.
If you want to skip, skip. If you want to learn yoga and just do yoga, then just go do yoga. If you want to take Zoom, I don't care. It's
Yeah.
not, both of us are not like you, and I don't think, oh, running is the only thing.
No.
It's movement that is important.
For me, running is something that sort of empowers the rest of my life.
Hmm.
Like when I don't run, I can feel myself getting stiffer, slower, just more like just not moving as much as I want in the ways that I want.
And
And
where's your mind at?
yeah, well, sure, it gets to a lot worse places, and I think that that's something that a lot of people can overlook. We've talked about a couple of things that can be easy to overlook, and mentality is one of them. Mental health. We have all this energy, especially with all these stimuli that we have today. We get hit with these things that make us feel different emotions throughout the day, and whether we know it or not, that costs us energy, right? And
Hmm.
you're either exhausted or you have this pent up ball of energy that needs to be exhausted, right? It needs to be let out. And so when we're just sitting around, frustrated and watching the news and just go to bed, and let's do it again,
Yeah.
it's like, get an outlet. Let's breathe heavy, get the lungs pumping. And it's really, really underrated how much that helps. I mean, I guess the best way to illustrate it is I dare somebody to be really frustrated and worked up at the end of a 5 mile run. Good luck.
You can't. And alongside with that, when you talk about mental health, also like find your tribe.
Yeah.
Find people that uplift you. I mean, we all have people within our lives that we cannot remove from our lives that might not have the best positive impact, but you can work around that. But, when I started pulling in more like minded people around me or consuming things that were more in an uplifting, positive mindset, that made a huge impact on everything,
Oh yeah,
you know?
it does.
So I went on with the race. So now we're going back at it. We're
Well,
going to,
so let's level set with where you're at in your running journey, right? You started with Tough Mudders. Isn't that
I
wasn't
started
that
with
your
Tough
beginning?
Mudder. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
How many Tough Mudders have you got under your belt now?
I have three.
You've done 3.
I
You've
have,
done pit crew for a few of them.
I've done pit crew for
At least 2, wasn't it?
3 worlds.
3 worlds. Okay.
So I've
So yeah.
done pit crew. And this year I also pit crewed for Amber's race.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So you're really getting into the race culture.
Yes.
So, what I guess there's things that intimidate people about getting into running or racing or whatever it is. What was your incremental journey like? Did you start with a quarter mile? Did you start with a mile? What'd you do? Like, what was your first step?
Well, I always loved walking. So, I would keep that walking up. And then I would be, let me just try a small jog, like a very easy pace jog. I think so. And I was like the everybody. Oh, let me go out of the gate at this high speed, and you can't because your lungs aren't built up
Not
to it,
built for
and
that.
your
Yeah.
your core muscles aren't built up to it, and your quads aren't built up to it, and your calves aren't built up to it. But when you start in a slow jog, and is it you look up and say, oh, I'm at this corner, I'm going to jog to that corner.
Yep.
Okay, and you take your breaths and you just keep walking. And that's where I started. That was my journey of starting.
Yeah.
And then as I was, um, and another reason why I did that race was because I knew I didn't have to run the whole thing. It wasn't a constant run. It
Right.
was, I could hike it, I could climb it, I could do whatever. And that intrigued me. That was more invigorating for me.
Right.
I would go. There's Devil's Lake here in Wisconsin, so that was part of my practice, and I would hike up these really steep parts of it, and then run the flatter areas. That was invigorating to me. That was like,
Yeah.
because now you're actually using more of body and different leg muscles and then running. So it was all of that built up. And then there were times where I thought my lungs would be explode, and I would slow it down a little bit, but then I would count into a pace literally this slow, 1, 2, and if I when I got to 10, I was like, oh, I ran a
Covered a
little
little bit.
longer.
Yeah.
Yep, and then I took a breath. So it was a very slow process.
Yeah. Well, and so, as you get into the process, what was it that kept you hooked to it? Was it like, did you get a taste of the runner's high that everybody talks about? What was it that kept you there?
It was actually it was when I got into it, and Amber would send me off on these little runs because we had a schedule, and mostly during the week it was like an hour run or an hour and a half run. That was I got through that. But then on Saturdays she would send me off on a 3 hour run or a 4 hour run. So I had my camelback on and I had to put snacks in it, and so I was gone.
You're like on an adventure at that point, right?
I'm in a corn. And then it was like the stronger I got, the more powerful I felt.
Yeah.
And the first time I finished a 3 mile run, I can't even remember how many miles. It might have been 12, if that, because it was a training aspect. But then I went out and I found trails around here. And then I was starting to meet people. And then I remember last year training, one woman ran by me and said, I've been watching you. Your pace is getting better. And that's like, huh,
That's really cool.
huh,
That had to be like wind in your sails, right?
yeah. So you feel that little bit of power coming and confidence. My confidence just kept going. And then I would come home and I'd be hungry and I'd be tired and I'd be like, oh, I just was out for all this time and it was fun,
Yeah.
And I would take a nap and I would be tired. I'm not going to say I
Yeah.
wasn't. It's
Sure.
exhausting.
But you've
Your
earned that nap.
body hurts. But my body hurts if I sit still,
Right.
if I feed it processed food, if I'm like, don't do anything.
Choose your hurt, right? Who is this? Do we have a cameo appearance here? Oh
Me
my
too.
goodness. Uh-oh.
Say hi. Say hi.
Hey, puppy dog.
Go see. Hold on a second. Go see Daddy. Go see. I came home to let you out. Go see Daddy. Mommy's busy. Go. Go see. Go see your father.
That's what editing's for.
Yeah.
Here.
So it was, you pick your poison. You pick which one do you want.
Yeah,
Where do you want your body to feel? You're going
exactly.
to be sore.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hide the fact that my body's not sore and it doesn't hurt from time to time.
No, and that's what I think folks need to really come to grips with is you're picking your pain, right? I mean,
Yeah.
oh, running's hard. Oh, it's hot, it's cold, whatever it is. Oh, so early, so late. All these little things. It's like that. So, one of my favorite things, and you kind of said it, when you start going out and finding new trails, right? Like, or you've moved to a new area, and one of your things is I want to find a trail. And it's really cool because it's like exploring the area you live in a different way. You're not in the car, you're
Yep.
not like strapped in something, on an agenda going somewhere in a hurry. You're out, free, so to speak, right? Anytime I'm out running, and now we're in the summer season, so night running is a big deal for me,
Yes.
especially in
In
this
your
Texas
area,
heat.
yes.
There's some days it is not a wise thing to run while the sun is up. Some people do it. I have, and just not smart. But anyway, no. But when you're out there, you're running, especially like those night runs. I just feel so free, right? There's no schedule. There's no restriction. I can just go, and the only restriction is my own lungs, right? My legs.
Yep,
So that's it.
that is it.
So no, I was kind of happy to hear you say that, because that is a one. Just, it's a special thing when you can just take off. You can benefit yourself because you're exercising, you're pumping oxygen through your body,
Yeah.
you're choosing your hurt, but you're also exploring, you're meeting people, you're seeing nature, you're just seeing things you would not otherwise see. And in that place and circumstance, you think things you would not otherwise think.
That is so true. You do. And I wanted to circle back for 1 second. When I did the Devil's Den, I told you I had two fears: height and I get lost.
Yeah.
And in those races, both of those things scared me because there's one section of this race that I had to climb over a cliff and in through a hill. And there was just this drop straight down. And I'm like, no, I am not going to allow my fear to stop me from seeing. And that took me 61 years to overcome that aspect. And I did get lost once. I took a wrong turn, and that's how I twisted my knee. But okay, because you know what I found out? Almost everybody that's been on a trail has lost their way.
I've done it
And
in a
here's,
Tough Mudder.
and
I've
here's
taken the
me
wrong turn. Yep.
thinking, oh, I'm such a fool. Look at
Yeah.
me. I'm a fool. I can't run. I can't follow. If anybody has never done a trail race, when you're in the trails, you do have to look for these flaggings
Right.
to know which trail to turn next on when you're in an ultra race. And when I came back and I was like, Jason, I like, shit, I took the wrong turn, this and that. And he's like, yeah, I've done that almost every race I've ever been. And I'm like, what? Like, so what we think we're failing at is a normality, but we play it up in our mind.
And you would never get to know that if you didn't join that
Right.
community, right? And
Right.
start, having those common experiences. And yeah, you do. You get down on yourself. You're like, oh man, this happens to me. And then, you look around, you're like, wait a second, it happens to
Yeah.
everyone else. Oh, now all of a sudden it's not as intimidating.
But
You know?
then what happens is you think about that through other aspects of your life.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
if you overcame that fear, then I can overcome this next one. Or I am not the only one that has made that mistake.
Certainly. Certainly. And how much more comforting is that in that journey that is still very intimidating. You're embarking on something you've never done before,
Yeah.
and you've got to prove to yourself that you can do it. It's really, there's something to that I think is there's a reality to that, but boy, is it scary. There's no guarantees.
So
So So then, all right. So you're on your journey here. You did this race. So leading up to this race, what was the furthest distance you've run in
before
preparation?
this race was 15 miles.
Okay. And then this race was how long?
This race was
You
30
said
miles to get a medal.
okay.
So
It
it was a 6 mile loop.
was the 6 mile
30
loop.
miles to get a medal, 50 miles to get a medallion.
Gotcha.
But at 8, I had to call it at 18 miles.
18 because of your knee.
Yeah, because of my
Right.
knee.
But you still went further than you've ever gone before
Yes.
in
And then
conditions that you were terrified of.
and terrified. And at night, I'm never a big night runner. It's called Devil's Den. There is a cave there that we had to go get our band from. There's a band because we had to put wristbands on to prove that
Right.
we completed each loop on it. Yep, there was pitch darkness, and in fact, at one point was we first time I ever really was up close and heard an owl.
Oh.
Like I kept saying, like, I hear this noise, like somebody's calling me, and everyone's laughing. They're like, Michelle, that's an owl. you know. But yes, it was wonderful, and the environment was so supportive.
Yeah.
Like there is nobody that is. It is a competition. There was a competition going on because you know who the competitors were, but it still was it's still phenomenal to watch
Yeah,
because
and I haven't done a race like that, but
yeah,
that is
we'll
what
get,
I took out of the Tough Mudder, right? It's
we're
that.
gonna get you out there someday.
Yeah, I bet. I can't wait for
Um,
that.
so just so you know, at the end of that race, the winner ran 101 miles, the male, and the female did 65 miles.
And how long did the 101 take?
That took him 30. There were different categories. He was at a no, he was at a 24 hour.
Oh, okay.
He was
Gotcha.
24 hours, but he's just he's a machine. Like
Yeah.
this guy is that's a whole nother story. And he's the sweetest
Yeah.
person I know, but he's just a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But yes, so on that, and then so then there's the race again this October.
Wow. And so you're knocking down things that you've never done before while you're in your 60s and aging gracefully. I can confirm that's happening. And in the best way, by the way. Um, but I think a lot of people, again, that it's just the how. How do we do that? How do I do that? How do I step into that life? Like, what are the steps? And we've talked about a few of them, but you've got your is it your business, your kind of just mission. I don't want to like sum it up to a business because I would say you're probably
It's
more
not
of a
mine.
mission.
It's a mission. It is my mission is for every woman to not allow age to be a reason not to do something, and for them to understand a couple things. One, don't let age stop you. When a woman hits, we started talking a little bit about this menopause. There has been the stigma of this. Oh, they are done, they're in menopause, because a woman does go through a complete metamorphosis again. They did it from when they were a child to becoming a teenager, and now they're doing it again. Only now it's always been looked at as, oh, they're old and dried up,
Yeah.
and that is the furthest from the truth. Furthest from the truth. There are amazing women athletes out there that have not started until their 50s and
Interesting.
more out there. There are runners. There is people who have gone out and sailed. There's a woman who went out and sailed around, different parts of the world by herself. There are over 50 bodybuilders, women, that didn't start in this business until they were in their late 50s. So I didn't start running until I was 59. So there is, and my mission is to help women find what their purpose is, because there is so much that we're going through with our bodies and medically, and we have that brain fog and those anxieties now come in, sleep deprivation, and all of that. And I help them try to find clarity in the direction that they want in their life. And yes, it does include moving your body. It does not include running. It could be however you wish to move your body. I had somebody once reach out to me and said, "Oh, I really hate running," and I'm like, "And why do you run? Like, if you hate it, why do you run?" She's like, "Well, that's what I'm supposed to do next." I'm like, "Next from what?" She says, "Well, I walk, and I'm bored with walking." And I said, "Oh, so you've accomplished everything but walking?" And she said, "Well, what's there to walk?" I'm like, "So you can speed walk. You can get on a treadmill and bring it at 15 degrees and bring it to a high speed and walk for," like, I was giving her all different things of walking. And she went, "Oh, I was bored with walking, so I thought I had to run next, and I don't like running." Then don't run. Don't run.
Yeah. Don't
My
run.
son actually just did a race that has to do all with running. Walking. Excuse me, walking. It's a 20-minute walk that you do up and down these hills, and it's
Yeah.
in a time frame. But that's walking.
Yeah. No, it's that simple.
Yeah,
And it really doesn't have to be an impressive thing. I think that
no,
that's something that is important to realize is, you know, 99.9% of people out there that are running or walking or just doing something physical, we're not impressive. I mean, it's just we're just out there doing what this body that we've got has been gifted to be able to do, right? And I think a lot of people find a lot of different motivations for why they run. I personally love my junk food, so I like to earn it, and I used
I
to
want my pancakes.
I used to be able to say that I have a hard time gaining weight, which is still somewhat true, but I've started to notice that, my midsection after a few donuts changes shape
And that
if I
happens
don't
big
run.
with women also as we age, unfortunately, that our metabolism also changes.
Yeah,
And, I encourage women to find that person to support them.
absolutely.
And if you have, like, you should have somebody that supports you and challenges you, but not tell you you have to be running a 7-minute mile to be good. That's not it. You like just like that person who contacted me. I'm like, you then don't run. Stop running. And she's like,
Right.
are you seriously? You're telling me not to run? Yeah, I am. She said, but you run. But that's me. That's my mindset. You know,
Maybe somebody likes jump roping. That's a heck of a
yeah,
workout, right? Boxing, and there's all sorts of
there
different
is
physical
tons of
activities.
stuff. We just had the CrossFit games here in Madison. Like there is thousands of things that people can do, and that
Absolutely.
is fine. That is a okay. It's just
Absolutely.
moving your body.
What you have to do is you have to find your thing. Find the
You have to.
thing
Yes.
that gets you, mobile and not
Yes.
stagnant. I think that that's part of a lot of what goes on in society right now. Is a lot of the stuff around us is influencing us to sit down. Look at the
Yeah.
screen, eat the cheap stuff. Suck it through a tube, a paper tube, not a plastic tube.
Yes.
All these things, and it's like y'all. A lot of these problems can get fixed by just getting out there and breathing oxygen. And
Breathe
and
in oxygen. Change one thing. Like one thing. Like
just
if
one
you are a diet soda person or a soda person, just don't have one soda. Remove
yeah,
one soda and have a water. It's just one thing.
trade
And that's
offs.
where you get the momentum from. We were talking about that last time. And I know what I have been doing up to what happened to me this year probably saved my life.
Well, that's a big deal. And I think that there's probably a lot of people that have similar stories, but maybe don't get heard. Um, but it really is a big deal, and I'm grateful that it has saved your life. Grateful to have you here. I think I know somebody else, at least one more person who is, but probably quite a few.
Couple kids
Yeah,
too.
yeah. No, very grateful for that, and I don't think that I don't think you say that lightly, right? I
No,
don't. Maybe it is an easy thing to say lightly. I mean, it's easy to Dr. Pepper saved my life, or like we say
yeah,
things like that kind of in jest, but no, you mean that. You mean that you really, the changes you've made saved your life.
they did. Um, and I'll go on to share it. I was I went in for my annual women's physical, and there were some abnormalities that I noticed within my own body before I went. And I had a discussion with my doctor, and she's like, "Let's just send for some tests." And long story short, I received through a series of tests, different doctors. I received a diagnosis of uterine cancer, and just just blew my mind. Like
What
I
is that feeling, right?
that
That moment.
it was actually an out of body experience. I do have to say that it was something that there are times now where I still can't comprehend the whole thing. I actually, we went to a Brewers game, came home. I didn't feel like cooking, so I went to get Chinese food. And as I was driving The doctor called to give me test results. And we were having a conversation, and she's telling me all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not understanding what you're saying. And she said, you need to have a complete hysterectomy. You have uterine cancer, and we need to get this out. So I walked into the Chinese restaurant, picked up my food, came home, and had a complete meltdown in his arms. I had to tell him,
Understandably so. Yeah.
and then call my children. Um, so that is, and I was training for the race this year. I was just all of this stuff. And to be hit with that news, now my mom passed from cancer. My dad had cancer, but that's not what he passed from.
Right.
My stepdad passed from cancer. My brother almost lost his life to cancer. And now every 6 months has to have a certain surgery done for the rest of his life
Yeah.
because of cancer. And now I'm told I have cancer.
Yeah. There's this just like arch nemesis of your family, and here it is
Yeah.
confronting you now, right?
Right. Yep. And so we proceeded with more doctor's appointments, some more tests,
Just to make
and
sure, right?
just to make sure on some certain things. The type of hysterectomy I was having a full hysterectomy. Either way, it didn't matter. But how they performed the hysterectomy, they had to make sure of certain things. And so I was able to have it laparoscopic. I had that July 19th, so we're going on 3 weeks of it. And they tested all my lymph nodes in that area. Everything is gone from my internals, and I have the
Woohoo!
blessing of um, everything was encapsulated within my uterus.
Wow. Well, that's the best news you could get, right?
Yes,
I mean that's just what a blessing. And you definitely feel like the changes you made in your life enabled you to approach this the way you did.
I do. I believed that I was in tune with my body.
Right.
I was a person who also made sure that I had a medical doctor that listened to me. And I believe keeping those yearly appointments. And so those three factors helped me survive, helped me to be where I am. Because if you wait longer, it would have gone. So the way it grew within my uterus, it didn't penetrate more than 50% of my uterus.
Mm. Okay.
So if it had penetrated over that, then I would have had to go into the radiation treatments and all of that. I did not need that because so it was because I understood my body and something that happened within my body. Knew at my stage in life I shouldn't be having that.
Mm-hmm.
Had an open conversation with my doctor because I trusted her and she listened to me, didn't fluff me off. And we both said it was probably something else, but we're going to do tests and we're going to make sure. And so we did a series of tests and it ended up the other way. So,
Right.
you know, those yearly appointments are extremely important and we will put them off.
Oh yeah.
We will put them off because we are too busy.
We put everything off.
We do.
Humans procrastinate everything. We're getting worse, guys. We're getting worse. Everybody out there, we're all getting worse.
And it's the same thought of, well, I got to take care of the kids or my job, or I have to do this, or, the house needs cleaning. No, I can't do that. I'm too busy with my job. You know,
There's
the
always a
grant,
higher priority.
there is a higher
Always.
priority. But if we don't do the self care internally and with ourselves, then we're pouring from an empty cup. And that's a old saying, but it's a true saying.
Yep.
You have to keep your cup filled to be able to pour out. And it was shortly after I found out, Miles, I was on a conference call with my business coach and another girl, and she said, I haven't done my exam in 5 years because I'm afraid of what they're going to find. Blew my
There's
mind because
probably
there
a
was
lot
that
of that.
fear.
Yeah.
So it might be found too late.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's important. I think
You know?
I think more than anything, you know, it's the other stuff that you said, right? One, you were in tune with your body, so you knew something was off, and that's a huge deal. I'm pretty in tune with my body. If I tweak something, I know
Right,
something's not right. I can generally tell if the difference between being sick or just being kind of off or tired or
right,
whatever it is. Um, I worry about how many people are actually in tune with their bodies because of the lack of physical activity. I slept wrong last night, so it could have just been that. Like there's just all these things that it could have been, so you just don't pay attention to it. But when you're moving and you're used to a certain function of your body, and then all of a sudden something changes, even something small, you will
hmm,
know it, and you'll be like,
yeah,
wait, that doesn't make sense. That shouldn't be happening, right? It's not
right,
that I just slept wrong or I stood up
yep,
too fast. Um, so yeah, I think it was really important that you were in tune with your body, but also having it, like you said, a doctor who's listening to you, and certainly there's been a lot of stuff made about relationships with doctors over the last few years, but I think that's you nailed it very perfectly. Is listens to you, a doctor that listens to you, right?
yeah.
Um, whatever someone's motivations are in their personal life, you can tell the difference between somebody who listens to you and somebody who doesn't. It's pretty quick. It's
And
not
it's
hard to figure out.
we're talking about natural resources and taking care of your body naturally.
Right.
And there is a place, I firmly believe, for Western medicine because we do need them
Right.
for what we do. But through this whole process, even after I had the surgery and came home, I tried more natural remedies within to help with my pain management. I'm back out walking. I'm up to 3 miles. I'm not doing the race this year. I'm volunteering. I won't be running probably till for another 2 months. But my body is expecting that movement, and the more I do that movement, even though it's an 18, 19-minute walk, it's still healing my body in a more
Absolutely.
natural way than the morphine that they gave me.
Yep. And it might hurt, right? But as long as you know you're okay,
Yes,
again, you kind of picked your pain.
right.
So no, I think that's a really neat thing to point out is that you, again, you face what I can imagine is some of the toughest adversity that humans get served. And there's a lot of tough stories out there, but I think what's important to realize is everything's relative to us. So, whether your experience was worse than someone else's is not necessarily as
No.
important as you had seemingly some of the worst experiences one after the other in a very short period of time in your entire life, right? And I think, again, and this is something that we're going to talk about a lot just as a theme on this podcast, is being faced with that moment where you feel like you just got hit with a ton of bricks, whether it was literally a car coming at you 70 miles an hour or, everyone's emotional ton of bricks that they get, whether it's losing a loved one or being faced with your own potential mortality in these things.
Hmm.
Um, and you said it, right? Your son said it. What's important now is you just have to take one step after the other. Put
Exactly.
one step in front of the other. And I think what's hard to remember is that still works,
It
right?
does.
When we get into these deep dark places and you went to go get your Chinese food. I can't imagine what the conversation would be like if you went in there, you're like, "Hey, guess what I just figured out or what
Yeah.
just learned." You would have given that person quite the experience. Like, what? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
I know.
Um, but how is it? Maybe it was something different each time, but what is it that you were able to do to put one foot in front of the other in that moment, in this last, I know we talked about with 2019 and the things you went through, but in this time now it's you. How do you take the first step? How do you go get your Chinese food?
Yeah.
I probably would have just left it. I would have forgot. I'm just going to drive away.
um, Again, there's a couple of things. One, the closeness with my partner and my children, that I was able to have some really open conversations or not and just cry,
Yeah.
because you have to feel your feelings.
Yeah.
You have to feel your feelings. You cannot. I am a brave person per se, but I have my moments where I know where I can just let my complete guard down and melt down into a puddle. Um, I then also remember, and this could be because of what I went through with my mom. Let's get the info. Let's understand everything before we go. Like, this is my death sentence. Let's let's get the complete information, and let's make sure, again, it's another doctor, that I feel comfortable with that doctor. That doctor's answering my questions. I didn't go out searching for 99 different things out on the internet. I didn't do any of that. I went in and had an open conversation. Your dad sat down next to me. We both felt comfortable. And the other thing I did was I wrote. I got it out of my brain and into my journal. And some days, I won't even put the language out here, but some days that's all I wrote. It
Yeah.
wasn't kind language, it's what I felt about cancer, but it was my release for that moment. I closed the book and I went for a run,
Yeah. And it
before
worked.
the it worked. And I just would release it. You have to release it.
Yeah.
And um, I, in my faith, I relied on my faith and my spirituality. There were a
Yeah, I
lot of
think that's
cardinals
important.
flying around my house for some reason for those 3 months before everything came to be done and completed and healing.
Well, I think that part of the journey is important, or just as important as any, and it's different for everybody.
Yes.
And I think kind of same as every other theme that we've kind of talked about is it's not important that you are some kind of professional at your spirituality or whatever. What's important is that you have some
Yeah.
spirituality. Acknowledge that that's kind of part of our existence. I think there's a lot of folks that would prefer to ignore it, and that's fine. I think you're robbing yourself, though. There is a human experience that exists in spirituality that's not available for you without it, and that really I think can apply regardless of your spirituality. So I think it's important that you mention that, and again, hitting these moments of what do we do, how do we carry ourselves forward, and taking that first step. You said it very simply, right? It wasn't some silver bullet. You didn't go Google the right thing. It's not like it was just your support system.
Yeah.
And if I can maybe add a little bit of a season to your perspective on this, is in my opinion, you had hardened yourself already. You were ready for that hard blow, and
Hmm.
you knew how to respond to that level of adversity. Whereas maybe somebody who had a softer life up to that point, and that was their first,
Yes.
challenge and face off with adversity, real deep, spiritual adversity. you know, that might be a bit of a different outcome. That might be somebody who struggles a little bit harder to survive that. I'm
You're
not
right.
speaking from some expertise of data or anything like that, but just again the human experience. What we see, what we kind of observe around us, and the people that we learn from and interact with. And people that have a certain mentality and sort of a battle test about them tend to fare better than those who don't. and that's harsh, I think, reality. I mean, hopefully that doesn't tick anybody
No,
off, but it's
and you're
real.
right. I, taking the steps to remove myself from a toxic relationship, and then starting to build my strength in the spirituality, in the mindset, in the body on that, and then moving on. But just because I firmly believe people don't give themselves and understand how strong they really are because they've never had to test that strength.
100%.
And so they don't understand how to test that strength. And it's not something that, everybody needs to. And I hope that they go through something adverse so they know how strong they are. That's not what I'm saying. I think people, I'm going to say women, and I don't want to push us down, but, you know, people always think that we're soft and, we can't handle things. And we're actually stronger than people really know. And I know you're married to a very strong woman, and
I
you
witness it
know,
every day.
yeah, so we don't give ourselves enough credit, and we're stronger than we imagine. We don't give ourselves grace to be strong. We
I
don't.
agree with that. I do, and I think it's very, very important. We talked about that a little bit on the first episode too,
Yeah,
about giving yourself grace, because if you can't do that, nobody else can. And that may sound kind of weird. You may sound I need grace to have grace. No, 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 no. It's the other way around, and that may be counterintuitive. But if you can't give yourself grace, others don't know how. They don't have the access to you to give you grace. And I think that that's much easier said than done. It's a very difficult thing to do.
it
But
is. It's just like love.
yeah,
You give all this love, but you have no self love. When you're
right,
again, it's that emptiness. You
right.
have to have that self love first to give that love.
And it can be hard to find that
Yeah,
when you feel like you're fighting from behind.
yeah,
Maybe you feel like you're just underwater with everything that life's throwing at you. But sometimes, maybe not all the time, but sometimes a little dose of perspective can actually change that very quickly. I mean, and maybe a more lighthearted example, something that Beth sent me the other day, from, I think it was from Instagram or something, and she's in the middle of breastfeeding right now with the 5 month old, and she has been exhausted just getting her butt kicked, and I'm like, yeah, you got a human sucking life out of you every day, a couple times a day.
yep,
And she saw a statistic, and I don't know how you quantify this or measure it or whatever it is, but I'm sure willing to believe it, that breastfeeding is the equivalent of running 7 miles a day.
yep.
And I'm going, all right, do you feel a little bit better about yourself now? Like, let's,
I think I saw that same post. I think I've
yeah,
seen that too. Yes, what the body produces in feeding another human.
it's wild.
Yes,
I mean, you're
you
feeding
know,
another human. Like
uh, uh,
to feed you takes a lot, right?
yes.
So feeding
And
another
now you're
human is going to take
feeding
a lot.
another human, and you have another human hanging off of you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the other one that probably drains
Yes,
the energy a little quicker too. But I tell her all the time that she has superpowers, right? And it's funny when you're tired, when you're beat down, you don't always um, absorb those things immediately, but I think that they help over time. And you made a comment about your previous toxic relationship, and I can't help but think, if you had stayed in that relationship and then gotten the news that you had gotten this year, how different would your response be?
yeah. It was. It's funny. I have in my little tribe here. I have a girlfriend who I've been with me over 30 years, and we
Yeah.
actually had that conversation. We actually had that conversation, and it was yeah. I don't even want to think of what it would have been like because that relationship was a very controlling, um, negative environment. So I'm sure there would have been some. Well, if you had, you wouldn't have gotten cancer.
Which is just not what you need once you're in that spot.
You don't get cancer. Like,
Yeah.
so you don't, I mean, yes, there's ways you can cure for your body, but cancer does not discriminate. Cancer could care less. We have
It
seen
strikes all places, all
every
ages, everybody.
everybody and anybody with cancer, down to small children, to the best of people that we know. And like, so cancer has no, it could care less.
Yeah.
It could care less. So, and that was also something that I had to keep in my mind. What did I do? What could I have done differently to prevent this? And there's nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And,
Nothing.
and that's where, that's where the mentality, the attitude all kicks in. Because at that point in time, it doesn't really matter, right? You're at that point, there is nothing you can do about what happened before. All you
No.
can do is respond the best way you can in that moment. And it's very, very difficult, but not impossible.
Yep.
Um, so Michelle, we've gone almost another hour here. Um,
And we could talk forever, you
we
and
could
I.
do it. We'll do another episode. But right now, let's wrap up a little bit, and I just want to ask, like, what, through all of this adversity that you have faced, especially recently, but I mean anything in your life, what is the one message to the women, the girls, just anybody? It doesn't have to, if there's men out there listening too, a lot of these messages are universal. So what is it that you would send them off with, just to kind of encourage them to take that step forward?
I was thinking about this because I knew you were going to ask me something like this. And there's just like, of course, your mind floods with all these things. And to take the first step forward starts with your mind. So, how can you change talking to yourself? So, the one thing I would encourage you to do is as you fall asleep at night, remind yourself how much you love yourself. And think about one thing that you are proud of, grateful for, anything positive that happened from your day. It could have been the worst day. If it's a day with the children, a day at work, I didn't I didn't kill my children today. Like, I don't care what it is, but find one positive thing as you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
And as you wake up in the morning, be grateful that you have that day to start.
Yep.
Look in the mirror, tell yourself you're beautiful, you are amazing, you are loved, and what is your intention for that day. So those two things help remove that negative forces that are starting around your head and start to bring in more of that positive self-love. And then understand, what do you want to do next, and just do. If Miles, if somebody decides, I want to get healthy, awesome. Sit down and write, what do you like to do? What do you like to do? Do
What can
you
make
like,
you sweat?
yes. Do you like to work the inside, outside? Do you like a gym or in your home? Do you like people around you, or are you a loner? Like, understand that, and then just do some research on it. That's your
Yeah.
first step. That's step one.
Well, and I will say, we have more resources now than
You
ever
do.
before. There was definitely a time not all that long ago that you didn't have access to understanding good ways to work out for different types of folks, or the facilities, the equipment, the
Yes.
nutrition. There's so much free information out there, y'all. So I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, Michelle. Start with positive thought. Allow what you are to be enough.
Yes.
Allow,
I don't
I
care
get
where your journey is. I don't care where you want to
right,
go. You have to love where you are at this point. I mean, stand up,
to go
look down at the
anywhere
point you are right now. Because if you don't love yourself now and you're not grateful for where you are now, you will not be when you get to where you're going.
for
You
sure.
won't, because
No,
you
and
won't understand it.
I couldn't agree more. So yeah, you gotta allow yourself to be enough, and to move at the rate that you can move,
Yep.
but move, right? Get going, do it.
Hey, I'm starting all over again.
You are, yeah, and you are. You're doing. I mean, shoot, you are. What you said, 3 weeks removed, and you
Yep.
just did 3 miles
A 3 mile walk.
walking, not
Walk.
running. We're not running. We're out
We're not
walking. It's
running.
okay.
We're not lifting any weights. I'm not doing any yoga. I can't do any of that stuff yet. I have another 4 weeks before I can do any of that stuff.
But
But
still, just incredible, and that I think I hope people are inspired by that. I'm certainly inspired by that, and it kind of
thank
makes
you.
me feel like I need to get my butt out there and go jog a few today. I don't have any excuses except that it's hot.
That's a
But
good excuse. Well,
I appreciate you so much, Michelle, for doing this and for just being willing to take the time. I know we both have busy lives, and I really enjoy your story, and I take a lot of inspiration from it. I certainly appreciate that you embrace natural remedies in the ways that I do, and I think that your story is one that people need to hear. You've been in the ring, you've been boxing adversity and I running over it as we've titled this episode, and hopefully folks can see that and go, I can do that too. Or I can try to get there. Whatever your thing is that you want to do, go take that first step. And keep fighting, y'all. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're going to face, and most of them are like these long races, right? The only thing we can
yes,
do is put one foot in front of the other, and it might be a muddy, cold, miserable step, but you just do it, and eventually you get to that finish line.
you do. You're
So,
you're you're living every day anyways, so might as well be doing it moving forward. And I'm honored that you asked me to be here. And like I said, we can talk for hours. And
yeah,
if anybody, I think you'll put my contact information. If
yep.
anybody wants to reach out, I definitely would answer any questions.
Yep, yep. We'll make sure your contact is in all the descriptions on the different places that the podcast can be reached, and obviously we'll put your social media stuff up there. It's at Michelle Wellness 360. Is that right? On
That is correct.
Instagram, and
One L in
one
the
L. Got
Michelle.
to remember that. Very important.
Yeah,
But yes, so go follow Michelle. Y'all follow her story. It's still unfolding.
yep,
And let's keep going. We're gonna keep embracing our natural remedies, keep running, and keep knocking down adversity. So thank you so much, Michelle, and thank y'all.
thank you.